Have you ever watched a Football Manager tournament on Twitch? The streamer Showdown. Maybe it was FM playoffs, the FM Super League, and even the Wasted Possession Draft Premiership, and thought, I quite fancy doing that. Even me and my friends, or a tournament of my own. But draft mode just doesn't quite cut it. I want to do something a little bit more interesting. Good news, I'm here to help. My name is Mozza. I'm a Twitch partner. I am obviously now doing YouTube videos. And I create the FM Playoffs database every month for all the new people coming in. We've got 12 every month at the moment who play against each other in a group stage into knockouts. I'm going to share a file with you today that'll allow you to do the same thing with whatever tournament you want to arrange, be it friends, be it against other streamers, content creators or so on. And it starts now. So welcome back to the YouTube channel, folks. As I said at the start, if you don't know me already, the name is Mozza. I am a Scottish Twitch partner. I broadcast live football games as well as, well, a little bit of everything on my Twitch channel. So if you want to come along, link down below as with all the socials. And today I'm going to tell you how to make your own Football Manager tournament, because draft mode isn't enough. Now, more and more people are playing PvP. Every tournament has its own little unique take on things, or at least tries to bring something different to the table. So it's getting harder and harder to do it. So you're only going to need a few things to get started. You must have the Football Manager pre-game editor installed. You'll find that in Steam under the tools options in there. It is free, you don't need to pay for it, and I'll talk you through what you need to do in there. It's just a few steps editing the file I've given you and you're good to go. Obviously you'll need Football Manager itself, and you'll need to run it basically with a draft mode first that allows your guys to pick the teams. You'll then need to do a little bit of editing work in the middle, and that will allow you to play the games as a network save. If you don't know what a network save is, when you hit join online game, it's not just for draft games. You can also play a normal game of FM with friends online. That's what a network game is, and that's how the playoffs and other tournaments of this kind work. So, without further ado, let's get the FM pre-game editor on the go. When you first load it up from Steam, this is what it should look like. There will be a few things that I'll tell you to do as we go along that might not make sense. It's purely because this is a very basic tool provided by SI, by Football Manager, for us to basically have a bit of fun with the game. It's buggy and it doesn't always work, so best thing you can do is keep it simple where possible. I'm going to go against that very shortly, but general rule, you can't go wrong. So first thing, make sure you go in on the 21.3.0 update. Do not use the 0.4.0 update. I know it's the most recent, but it has issues with online games from time to time. By the time you watch this, it might have been fixed. Better to be safe than sorry though. So load up 21.3.0. You'll get into the main screen here. Not a lot going on. All you do is go to load editor data. When you load the editor data, you'll see I've got 101 different databases. Find the one that I've provided for you, which is this FM Playoffs ADV for Advanced. Get it loaded and we get started. Right, so the basic things you need to know about this database and the way it works. We'll get into a few of the changes you can make shortly, but first of all, it is based in Gibraltar. The reason for that is because it's quite a small nation and it was easier to change things out. You're not going to miss any players unless you really want to do a full Gibraltar draft, in which case you might want to build your own database for a different country. But when you're starting a new game, all you need to do is load up the Gibraltar League, and that's it. Simple as that. In the editor itself, in the file, have a little look around at different things that I've amended, different things I've chosen. By all means, you can obviously make little changes here and there. Just be careful not to go overboard, because one mistake in advanced rules breaks a file. So make sure you take it slowly but surely, and I'll give you a very brief idea of the essential things you need to change. But on the left hand side, first things first, under advanced rules you can see two different sets of rules, one for the country and one for the competition. So under the country is your standard set discipline rules, how many teams should be in the leagues, that kind of thing. And you can see here under required teams, it expects 10 teams in this FM playoffs competition. If you're adding or changing, taking away teams from your comp, you will need to amend this as well. And the easiest way to give your own competition a name is just to double click it. In here, you've got the FM playoffs, or whatever your league is going to be called, your cup. If you go to details, change the names, change the colours, leave the rest of the settings as they are though, in terms of reputations, pitch sizes, all that kind of thing. Just makes life easier. So you've got your name sets, you've got your colours, you've then got your teams. This menu on the left hand side under teams, change the names to whoever it is that's playing, or if they want to give their teams their own name, change them to whatever they are. You can obviously choose their own stadiums if you so wish, but I've got these all set up with custom stadiums that work, so if you don't want to mess with them, just leave them, they'll work fine. And double clicking again will take you in to the teams. I've added a player here just to show you how to do this. So once you've got a club, you've changed the name, you've changed the colours. If you want to change the stadium, it is in the stadium menu, you can do so. You can also change attendances in there. You go to staff and players, which normally is greyed out because there's no players yet. Click on players, and here is where you build up the squads. So either do an offline draft, or if you want to use FM's draft mode, it makes it easy as well. You can start a draft game with all the managers in it, pick your players, complete the draft, and the most important thing is to save the game straight away. The person who's doing the editing should host that draft, so they have the save game right there, and you can run this editor alongside FM, both at the same time. You can go into the FM save, see who's been picked for what clubs, and then go into that club in the editor, click add down here, search for the name, find them, click OK, and it'll add the player. This will take you a couple hours or so the first time you do it. It probably took me about 3 hours for the first playoffs. Every single time I've got quicker after that. As soon as you just get the handle on just doing the simple things, you don't need to mess with anything else. I'm down to just over an hour now to set up the FM playoffs database. Give it 3 or 4 runs and you'll be in the same position, fingers crossed. So with that, you are now ready to start your own 10-team competition if you want to run it exactly the same way as the FM playoffs is run. You now know how to change the name of the competition, the colours, the teams, names and colours, add the players to the teams. If that's all you want to do, all you do is go to File, Save Editor Data. Once you've done that, you go to Rules, Test Rules, and the FM playoffs. It obviously tells me here you've got to save your changes first before you do so, but when you do that, it'll run through and verify everything's working. As soon as it's verified, you can load up the file in-game and you're good to go. If there's an issue, it'll tell you, and you can go back and try and retrace your steps and find out what's gone wrong. Having said that, assuming everything's gone fine, because changing names doesn't affect anything, changing colours doesn't affect anything, and adding players doesn't either, you should have no issues here. This is where things get a wee bit more complex. If you want to change how many teams are in this cup, or the way it's set up. So bear with me, because anything that happens from now on could break the file. What I would suggest is, instead of just saving it, go to File, Save As, and you'll notice I have a test file. Save it as a file called test until you know it works, and then you do know it works, reload it as test and save it as a file you want it to be. That's the best bit of editing advice I've ever had, and I've done it ever since, because it stops you losing all your progress. So you've decided that you're ready to change this tournament. You want to put your own stamp on it, you want to add extra teams, you want to take teams away, you want to change how many teams qualify for the knockouts. Bear with me, because this is how you get right into the nitty gritty of how to make changes in the FM editor. So, if you want to add more clubs, first of all, you'll need to create them first, or you can add in existing clubs. Down the bottom here, under the tournament menu, obviously it still says FM Playoffs for me. If you've renamed it, it will say whatever the tournament is. You're in the detail page for it. You go to teams, there's an add button down the bottom. In the same way as you search for players, you can search for a club as well. So if you wanted to add Manchester City, you can. Click them, click OK, and it'll be added in. However, that will now mean that the database will not work because it's set up for 10 teams. This is how you get around that. Go to Advanced Rules. First of all, in the top left menu. You're only really ever going to use Advanced Rules and Database in this top left menu. Database when you're searching for anything or creating anything, and Advanced Rules for changing any of the rules that are in place. In here, go to the competition. Sorry, not that menu, this one here, on Show Rules. You'll need to go into the competition itself and have a look there. You'll need to finish in the country menu, because I showed you earlier on the required teams in there says 10. You will need to amend that if you're changing the number of teams that are in. Other than that, there's not too many things to amend in the country menu. It's mainly done in the competition menu. And we'll start off in general. Nothing needs amended here. It's all set up to work fine and dandy. It's stages that you need to go into to make any amendments. As it is just now, you have 2 groups in this FM Playoffs database. 5 teams go to Group A, 5 teams go to Group B. It's totally random how they're drawn, which I quite like. It means that you're not biased in any way. There is a way that you can change that to make the groups set if you so wish, but for now I'll concentrate on how to change the numbers and change the tournament to what you want it to look like. So if you go to the league, under General, you'll see it's set up for groups and 10 teams. Change that number to how many teams you want to be in the groups. From there, you go to teams. It should say get all teams from division. Don't need to change that. Group settings is where you'll need to make a wee change as well. If you want a different number of groups to 2. If you want 4 groups with 20 teams, do that. You will need to change the knockout, so bear in mind. So that's the initial changes. League settings is where you'll find the qualification rules, and in here you can see the knockouts are called a Champions Playoff. Do not change the names of these main stage names, because it just gives you more trouble than it's worth. All you're ever going to see Champions Playoff in is in a small print in the game. It doesn't affect anything. Don't mess with it, is my recommendation to you. The only thing to change is the number of top places. What this is telling you how many teams from each group are going to qualify to the knockouts. So if you still want to have 6 teams going through, 4 in the quarterfinals and 2 going into the semi-finals directly, don't change this. But if you're changing the number of groups, you may well need to amend the number of teams going through as well. So to give you a very quick example, there's 6 teams qualifying at this moment in time, but you want to do 3 groups instead of 2. You would change that 3 down to 2, which means 2 would come from Group A, 2 from Group B, and 2 from Group C. You'd still have 6 teams going through, and the knockouts would still work. However, the league schedule may also need changed. If you're playing more games, you're going to have to cram them in somehow. In this part here, you'll see there is a start date and there is also an end date, but they're under numbers. The reason for this is it makes it easier for FM to schedule things properly rather than just putting a set date in. And where you'll find that is if you go to Fixture Times and Rules, Fixture Dates, you can see it's 10 and 11 they're marked as, and there's 10 and there's 11. So any changes, make them in this menu, not in any other menu. Leave the IDs there, so you've got a few 10 and 11 and other numbers, don't mess with them. Change the dates within this fixture dates menu, and it'll make your life so much easier, I promise you. Other than that, you've got your match days, which naturally are set up for Saturdays. You can change it if you wish. You can make it all Sundays. You can do whatever you want, really. Now we go onward into the knockout side of things. This is where it can get a wee bit more complicated if you want to make changes. My recommendation to you is, even if you're adding more teams in the league stage, if at all possible, leave it to 6 teams qualifying from the league stage. But if that just doesn't work, then this is how you make amendments to the knockouts. First up, I'll show you on the left hand side, is stage 1 we're in. PRPL stands for promotion playoff. I know it's not that technically, but generally when I'm doing my database work, I usually work with promotions, so that's just how I keep myself right. It doesn't mean anything, it's just a code, ignore it. In the general menu, first off, you'll see the number of teams there that qualify for knockouts. So put in however many teams it is in there that you want to go through. You can again change the yellow card rules if you so wish. You can clear yellow cards from the league stage, which I do for the playoffs. And in requirements, it should say the league has to finish before this stage is drawn. That's just to make sure everything works properly. But the teams, this will need to be changed if you're making amendments to the number of teams that are going through. What this is doing is the menu I showed you earlier that you said 3 teams per group were getting through from. This is giving them seedings. So what you're saying here is 2 teams will be seeded top, 2 seeded teams will be seeded in the middle, and 2 teams will be seeded at the bottom. And what that does is mean third place teams will get the bottom seedings. They will play against the second seeds, and then the winners of those will face the top seeds in the semi-final. All you'll need to manage here is, if you're keeping the same kind of style but you're putting more teams through, you'll need to change the number of teams in each seeding, essentially. So say you've added 2 extra teams to go into the knockouts. What that means is they all become quarter finalists because there's 8 of them. You do not need to worry about top seedings, middle seedings and bottom at that point. You can delete this very bottom by clicking remove when it's highlighted. And in the other 2, you would change the maximum number of teams to 4. So what that would do would give you the 4 best teams qualifying, playing against the 4 worst teams qualifying. That's the easiest rule of thumb for it. And round defaults, again, you don't need to mess with them unless you want to change substitute rules. But the main big amendments will come under the rounds menu. As it's set up just now, you can see 4 teams go into the quarterfinals. It says 4 teams are added to the round, and 2 further teams are added to the semi-final, the 2 group winners in this case. If you didn't want that to happen, it is relatively easy to make the changes. If you go into quarter-final in general, it'll show you the number of teams and the number of teams that are added. You can change that to 8 and 8, and it'll just give you a normal quarter-final setup. However, you would also need to take this 2 and change that to 0, because the game will still try to add 2 teams in, at 2 extra teams at the semi-final stage, and you don't need that anymore. So it's just a case of making sure you go through each of these round menus, making sure everything looks right, that it passes a common sense test. You can also add an extra leg, so it can be 2 legs instead of 1 if you want. Number of matches would need to change if you had 8 teams, so you'd need to change that to 4 matches, for example. And yeah, you don't need to worry about cup tie mappings, you don't need to worry about cup draw rules. That keeps the seedings apart for you. It does the hard work. And the main thing is, when you get to the final, you should be left with 2 sides. Sounds simple enough, doesn't always work out that easily. Sometimes you just need to save the game, verify it, and load it in the actual Football Manager to see if it works. Just holiday through the whole thing, make sure a team wins it. If it looks alright and the teams have played the right teams have qualified, hopefully you're good to go. And once you've made all your changes here, don't worry too much about the fate here. It's just going to make the winning team be the champions. That's all that does. It doesn't actually affect anything. Fixture dates you can amend as well. You can see quarter-final, semi-final and final have set dates. If they've got 2 legs, you would need to make another one. So you would just click one, you can duplicate it times 1, and you can set an extra date in. You can mess around with the games getting played on certain dates easily enough in this menu. But once you've done everything and you feel like you've double checked it all and it all makes sense, go back to your country menu for Gibraltar, make sure the required teams is correct. That should show the amount of league teams that you've got. Also, just double check that everything else looks sensible. You don't need to worry about reserve rules. Fixture rules, as I said, I've not changed anything in there, so you don't need to worry about that. Discipline, you don't need to amend, but you can do if you so wish. Start dates, I wouldn't even mess with those. I would just get into it, to be honest. Hopefully, that's given you enough of a basic background to make the amendments you want to. Do not hesitate to drop me a DM on Twitter though if you've got any questions, or drop a comment if there's anything you want to go through in a bit more detail. I'm more than happy to make a general editing video at some point just to explain more of the intricacies of this, because it has taken me, no exaggeration, years to learn how to use this thing, and I still make mistakes. So advanced editing is not for the faint of heart, which is why I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible for you. And if you think you're done, brilliant. All you need to do is what I told you earlier on, the exact same process. File, save, or save as if you're saving it as a test file. Once you've saved it, go to your rules, go to test rules, click the competition name. That'll do the hard work for you. You don't need to save again after that. All it's doing is checking your save file in the editor to make sure it's fine. And then load it up in the game as you would a normal game. Add yourself as an unemployed manager, holiday through to the end, and have a look at the competition when it's finished. It usually, the way it's set up just now, it should finish in January if you're going in and not making any changes to the setup. If you are making changes to the setup, you can obviously amend the dates as well. But the way that it's set and the reason the dates are the way they are right now is it'll avoid the international dates. So your players will not be called up by their country and you'll not lose them for any competition games. That makes it a bit fairer, and that's why it's been set up this way. You can change it if you so wish, just bear that in mind. That's one of the things that might affect your gameplay, might affect people getting upset if they're getting screwed over by losing a few players here and there. But that rounds off my very, very basic guide on how to amend this file and get your own competition set up. If you do have any questions about this, if you're wanting to do a very much more custom setup, what I'd recommend firstly is downloading the file anyway and having a look at all the different settings that I've placed, because you'll be using the same prompt, the same settings, just amended numbers or amended names in the editor itself. The editor's a simple setup in that if you try to go off the beaten track, you'll find yourself in problems. Try and follow the same pattern that I have done for this when you're making your own competition, and you won't go far wrong. There might still be issues here and there, that's just the nature of the beast. However, give me a shout and I'll do my best to help if possible. I'm sure other people out there will as well. And more than anything, enjoy it, because this is such a big thing of FM now. PvP is getting massive, and it's something I've been waiting to happen for a few years. I'm delighted we're now at the stage where more and more people are playing against each other rather than just doing their own saves in the AI. It adds a bit of freshness to it, I think, and especially if you're just doing it with your mates, it's a great laugh. Just get a drink in hand, book a few hours away, get yourselves in the game, chat away on Discord. It's a crack way to spend the night if you're just looking for a chill out. All things considered, that should be you good to go. If you need any help, as I say, you know where to find it. Please do consider dropping a subscription to the YouTube, because I'm intending on bringing more guides of this type to the channel. Obviously come and see me on Twitch as well. I usually can be seen on a Tuesday night, Thursday night and a Saturday. Those times are changeable just now though, because I'm doing a lot of real sports content for Twitch over the next 6 months. Your best bet is to find me on Twitter and you'll get a schedule update every week from there, and we'll fire on. But I really appreciate your patience watching this video. Make sure you can bookmark little points as you go with the editor open if you need a hand. And other than that, happy FMing. Catch you later on, folks.